Donald Trump is now threatening a lawsuit to stop the upcoming No Kings protest, which shows you how scared he is. Now, this was today in the White House during an Antifa press conference, where Donald Trump was asked about the upcoming No Kings protest on October 18th, and this was the exchange.
A No Kings anti-Trump rally coming up.
Well, you just tell me, I would love to do something about that, bring a lawsuit, do something.
Yeah, he wants to bring a lawsuit because people are exercising their First Amendment rights. Now, should be noted, the question was specifically about Austin, and the reporter was upset because the protesters weren't being charged a fee to exercise their First Amendment right. But this shows you exactly how scared Donald Trump is. He knows the power of protest. He knows the power of when people speak out and rise up. He saw it in 2020. He knows what can happen, and he knows that we are going to amplify our voices. We are going to build November, and he is going to find out, not just on October 18th, but come November of next year.
Hey, what's up, America? Our government not listening to the American people. So I don't know about you, but I'm sick of congressmen and senators voting on their personal belief systems. When you're a congressman or a senator or do anything in the government, your personal beliefs take a back seat to your constituency. So it doesn't matter what your personal beliefs are. If your voters tell you to do something, you have to do it. You're simply a conduit for them. Do you understand? For far too long, politicians have been putting their own brand of personalization into the government. And that's not what this is. When you're elected to Congress, Senate, no matter what it is, you're nothing but a conduit for your constituency. So if for some reason you're a Christian conservative that gets elected and 85% of your voting base wants gay marriage legal, even if you are against it morally, you have to vote in favor of what your voters say. Likewise with Democrats, if you're total left-wing progressive, but everybody that voted for you wants Second Amendment rights, you don't vote against that. You vote the way your voters tell you. Do you understand? You're just a conduit. You don't have the luxury of putting your own personal spin on the shit, even though people are doing that. If a majority of your voting base tells you to do something, you're supposed to do it, even if you morally think it's wrong or against what you believe. Because you're a politician. It's not about you. It's about the voters and the citizens. That's what it means when people say you work for us. You understand? We voted for you. As a majority, we want something, so get out there and fucking do it. I'm sick of seeing 75% of people wanting something and then their politician blatantly voting against it. What the fuck is that shit? As a politician, you're not a moral compass. Do you understand? You're a conduit, nothing more. You're supposed to be the voice of your voting base, not the voice of your own fucking mind. Even up to the president, that's right. If a majority of the population wants something, you're supposed to do that, not go against them and say, oh, the people be damned. That's not why you're elected to office, fuckface.
8 days into a government shutdown and nothing has changed. Let's go over who's doing what, where we stand, and what the outlook is. First, for my federal employee friends, Donald Trump is backing off the plan to fire federal employees because, one, a whole bunch of Republicans told him that he can't legally do it, and two, they told him they wouldn't support it. So now, yesterday we learned that there was an internal White House memo saying that if you're a furloughed federal employee and you don't work, you're not going to get paid. And pretty much everybody came out against that, with the exception of a few talking Tea Party-esque Republicans who didn't support the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act in 2019. Anyways, your Jim Jordans, your Mike Lees, people like that, including Mike Johnson, the now Speaker of the House. So those people are out on TV talking about how, hey, if you don't work, you don't get paid. But they don't have any support for that thought process. That's been made clear to the White House and to these Republicans. And Mike Johnson might try to bring a bill to the floor, but it will get struck down almost immediately because Republicans are already in a tenuous enough situation going into the midterms that they can't afford in deep red states to lose the federal employee vote. And they would lose that vote. So they're not going to risk that. So if you're a furloughed federal employee, you're going to get paid. I promise you that. And if I'm wrong, and in 6 weeks or a month or 6 days, whenever everything returns to normal, you can come back and berate me in my comments, and I will own it. So, the House isn't doing anything. They're on recess. Mike Johnson put them on a third week of paid vacation. The Senate's not doing anything because John Thune says he's not going to negotiate with Democrats over health care, and Democrats say we're not going to negotiate on a continuing resolution unless health care is on the table. Donald Trump says he might negotiate with Democrats on health care. So we're really at an impasse. Analysts are saying that this could last at least 30 days, if not longer, with some analysts predicting 45 to 60 days. Now, most federal employees cannot last that long without some sort of pay. You're already hearing about air traffic controllers at smaller facilities that aren't at the top of their pay bands calling in sick so that they can go work Uber or work second jobs, and just essentially trying to already make ends meet, even though their last paycheck isn't until sometime next week. They have to plan ahead for that missed income. So there's a lot going on. Nothing's changing. We're only going to see governmental services decrease over the next couple of weeks as this government shutdown drags on. If you're an employee, stick it out. I'm here. I'm telling you the information as I get it. If you have information to share, go ahead and share it with me. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email. My email address is in my bio up above if you want to remain anonymous that way. But otherwise, I'll have more information for day 9. Have a good day.
Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. He is all over the Epstein files. And what those files say and show about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and what they did to young girls, it's bad, which is why he is trying so hard to cover it up. You want more evidence that it's bad? I'm going to show you a clip of Attorney General Pam Bondi testifying before the Senate, and she is asked directly by Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse about pictures that people have said exist of Donald Trump with half-naked young girls. And listen to what Pam Bondi says.
Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The fact that she refuses to answer that question tells me that those pictures do in fact exist and that they are bad. If they did not exist, then this would have been a perfect opportunity for the Attorney General of the United States to very clearly and directly say, yes, Senator, let me answer that question. Yes, we did look. We did an exhaustive search of the Epstein files, and there are no such pictures of Donald Trump anywhere in our files. There is no evidence to suggest that any such pictures ever existed. There is no evidence to suggest that the president, Donald Trump, had at any time done anything inappropriate with young girls or with Jeffrey Epstein. There is absolutely nothing to these baseless allegations, and to prove it, we are going to release all of the files. She would say something like that, and then release the files, right? But she can't, because it's a lie. Because those pictures do, in fact, exist, and they are bad. And if she denied the existence of those files, she would be committing perjury. And yes, Donald Trump would not prosecute her for lying under oath before the Senate. But you know what? The statute of limitations will not have run on that crime by the time 2029 rolls around and we have a new president. And so if she committed perjury today, even if Donald Trump would never prosecute her, she could be prosecuted when the next president takes office. That's why she refused to answer that question. That's why she immediately deflected to some half-assed accusation against the senator and other senators. This is pathetic, and it's obvious what's going on. This is part of the cover-up. Donald Trump is in those damn files, and what it says about him is bad, so bad that he believes that if that information came out, that it would end him. That is why he is trying so desperately to cover it all up.
Are you thinking about buying a new car? Well, you may want to think twice about who you decide to buy it from based on how the company gives politically. Let's look at some car brands that are safe to buy if you support the Democratic platform. Chrysler, which owns Fiat, Jeep, Ram, and a bunch of other brands, leans heavily Democrat, along with Subaru. Luxury brands Porsche and Audi also lean heavy into the Democratic platform. And finally, Nissan and Honda also give heavily to the Democratic platform. GMC and Toyota give about equally to both political parties. Mazda has decided to stay out of politics completely, and they don't give to any political campaigns. There are two brands you want to avoid, and those two brands are Mercedes-Benz and BMW. And the number one car brand that you do not want to purchase if you are a Democrat would be Tesla. Are you thinking about buying a new car? Well, you may want to think twice about who you decide to buy it from based on how the company gives politically. Let's look.
We have some major news this afternoon. The White House is becoming increasingly serious and is moving closer to invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807 on United States soil. Here's what that would mean. The Insurrection Act of 1807 gives Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the authority to allow military officials to conduct law enforcement activities against American citizens on U.S. soil. That means the United States military would be able to conduct arrests, conduct searches and seizures, etc. Anything that a police officer could do, military can do. That includes the National Guard. That includes Air Force or Army units or anyone that would be deployed on American soil. And according to NBC News this evening, White House officials are becoming increasingly serious about discussing how to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, this will almost certainly bring legal challenges almost instantly, because to invoke the Insurrection Act, you have to have a colorable legal basis to do so. There has to be a rebellion, or it has to be done to quell civil unrest. And well, as federal judges across the country have already found, especially one in Portland, Judge Karen Immergut, Donald Trump's reality is untethered to the facts. That's a direct quote from her opinion, where she recently blocked the deployment of the Oregon National Guard to Portland, Oregon. And so we're at a situation right now where the White House is on the verge of essentially allowing the United States military to take over for the local police, becoming the police force of the President of the United States. And it happens as a couple things are shifting right now as it relates to this White House and to the National Guard. First, Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, who's really leading the charge in all of this, sparked online controversy after freezing mid-interview on CNN while citing Donald Trump's, quote, plenary authority to deploy the National Guard, prompting speculation that he actually stopped himself from revealing too much about the administration's expansive view of presidential power amid legal challenges to Trump's troop deployment and talk of invoking the Insurrection Act. Now, what that would essentially means is the White House thinks is that it has this overarching executive authority to do what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. And that is a very serious development. And it comes as about 500 National Guard troops from Texas and Illinois have been deployed already just today to the Chicago area for 60 days with the goal of, quote, protecting ICE and federal property. But Governor J.B. Pritzker from Illinois called it a, quote, unconstitutional invasion and is actively suing to try to stop it. Now, before I continue, it's important that we don't normalize this moment. I won't normalize this moment, so please consider supporting my work today by subscribing to my Substack, clicking the button below. In addition, this afternoon, Donald Trump held a roundtable designed to target Antifa. And while this roundtable essentially, Antifa isn't a legitimate organization, right? It has no head. It's a completely decentralized organization. But the roundtable featured right-wing influencers that spoke about their alleged experiences on the ground. And there are some big takeaways from this roundtable. The first, Donald Trump said that his administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away when addressing flag burning. Now, as you know, flag burning is a protected First Amendment right under the United States Constitution. It was protected by the Supreme Court prior. And while Donald Trump recently signed an executive order trying to imprison those who burn the American flag. But the only issue here for him is that Congress makes law, not the president, and that executive order doesn't actually make flag burning a crime. But he did say that he now wants to take the freedom of speech away when addressing flag burning. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, vowed that the Justice Department will dismantle Antifa from, quote, top to bottom. And she did this likening the way, essentially, how authorities went after cartels, which many online speculate that means that they could potentially be using this as a pretext to go after Antifa members or those they designate as Antifa without sufficient due process. Nick Sordor, a right-wing influencer, said that he grabbed a burning flag from the man on the street. Trump asked if he knew that man and then told Sordor to give the flag to Attorney General Bondi so that they could, quote, start prosecutions. So that really is kind of the big takeaways from this Antifa press conference. And Donald Trump further accused some media outlets of working with opponents, calling ABC and NBC very bad, but said that he's hopeful about CBS under its new owner. Its new owner, obviously, as you know, is Barry Weiss. CBS and Paramount purchased the Free Press for over $100 million. Barry Weiss is now the editor-in-chief of CBS. In other news on the ground in Chicago, clergy and faith activists in Chicago say that their religious freedom is actually under threat after ICE used pepper balls and force against peaceful demonstrators praying outside of a detention facility. The United States government is obviously in its 8th day of a government shutdown. There appears to be no end in sight. A viral video by a reporter shows Mike Lawler, a representative from New York, Republican, confronting Hakeem Jeffries. Tensions started flaring. Jeffries snaps, quote, "You're not going to talk over me because you don't want to hear what I have to say, so why don't you just keep your mouth shut?" And it really comes as tensions are flaring on Capitol Hill over this government shutdown. Airport lines are longer, delays are increasing, cancellations are increasing, and while it doesn't appear that there is an end in sight. In addition, a new report is now warning that if the Supreme Court strikes down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in a case it's going to hear next week, Republicans could redraw up to 19 additional House seats in their favor, potentially locking in control of Congress for a very long time. And according to Politico, Donald Trump's redistricting campaign is reportedly facing setbacks in Indiana, where top state officials have warned that the effort is actually stalling, and J.D. Vance is heading to Indiana for his second visit in 3 months to rally support from lawmakers. In addition, former Uber driver Jonathan Rindernet, who's 29 years old, was arrested for allegedly starting the January Palisades fire in Los Angeles, a devastating fire that killed 12 people. Investigators claim that he intentionally ignited it after appearing agitated, took photos and listened to music about fire, then fled as the wildfire spread from an earlier smoldering blaze he had also allegedly caused. Folks, that's all the news right now. As always, if you want to support my work, make sure to subscribe today, like, comment, share, and I'll see you in the morning.
Donald Trump said that he's getting ready to send y'all a stimulus check. How you feel about that? Let's talk about it, shall we? So imagine this. The government raises prices on imported goods. You pay more at the register, and then later they send you a check saying, we're giving it back. That's the latest idea making headlines right now on social media. I'm seeing it everywhere. So, of course, I went to digging around to see what I could find. So here's what we do know. Donald Trump and the Trump administration is floating an idea of sending out what they call stimulus checks in the amount of sometimes $600 to $1,000 to maybe $2,000 for U.S. citizens, right? Funded by revenue, they say, from tariffs placed on imports. So now it sounds simple. Tariff revenue goes up. The government sends the people a quote unquote rebate. But behind the scenes, it's really not that simple. So let's talk about how it works. First of all, Congress has to make it legal. We've been talking about this in the night shift, where it has to be an act of Congress, not the president. And they would have to pass a law. Hypothetically, let's call it the Tariff Rebate for Americans Act, okay? Now, that law would actually authorize the Treasury to send out checks, like during the COVID relief days. Y'all remember those? Tie the funding to actual tariff receipts. Money collected when goods cross U.S. borders. Include eligibility limits. For example, I just kind of threw something out here. Only taxpayers below a certain income could qualify for those stimulus, right? So if the tariffs collect $150 billion, and again, this is an if, we just thinking out loud here. For each check, it's about $600 to $1,200. It could work. But anything higher, $2,000 a person, would outpace what the tariff pot could actually be able to sustain. All right, so the big question right now is aren't you already do that? Aren't tariffs already paid to us? Yep. And that's the twist. So tariffs are technically paid by the importer, okay? But importers raise their prices to cover the costs. So hypothetically, let's say, for instance, Brownstone Living and Essentials orders a ton of home care goods, and now my stuff is sitting at the ports and I can't get it until I pay that $20,000 tariff that on top of what I've already paid for the product. So it'll either sit there or I have to offset the cost. So some kind of way I had to take each unit and add that either to product I already have or add it to the product that I have per unit and increase the price so that I can make my money back. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to sit there. And I know people that's actually happened to. So that means you're already paying for the tariffs because importers are actually offsetting the cost of those tariffs to you already. And you've seen it. You've seen it at Walmart. You've seen it at Target. You've seen it. That's if you still go to Target. But I do know that if you open up those little plastic tabs, those little rubbery tabs on the price tags, you'll actually see that they've already raised the prices on some of your goods and your products that are coming from overseas anyway. So that means every time you buy imported goods like cars, electronics, groceries, clothing, you've seen it. Peel it back, you'll see what I'm talking about. So these rebates actually aren't gifts that are being given back to you. They're partial refunds of what you already paid in higher prices. How do you feel about that? So let me give you another example. You bought a $40 shirt that used to be $35. The extra $5 is the $5 tariff cost, okay? Now the government sends you $10 back later, but you already overpaid at the store anyway. You already overpaid. Okay. Now, so here's the thing. New tariff policies could push that up to about $150 to $300 billion in 2025. If checks were $600 each, the government could afford around 250 million payments, about one per adult per child. Okay. But if checks were $2,000, the total cost would exceed about $500 billion, way more than the tariff revenue alone could cover. So this idea of $1,000 extra dollars or $2,000. So unless Congress raises other taxes or borrows money, those big numbers, there's no balance. And I actually had to reread, and I thought, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. So anyway, so Congress actually controls the spending. This is what we know, not the president. Okay. So a new law is required. We've been talking about this. Congress makes the laws. Courts could block those tariffs as well if they exceed executive power, and checks could take months to reach households long after prices have already gone up. Okay. So if, say, for instance, you've been seeing it in the news for the past couple of weeks or whatever, or even the past couple of days, which I've recently seen, and I thought, let me see how this would actually work and who would qualify. It doesn't really say, does it? But this is just giving you something to think about. And here's the thing. It's not going to be overnight if, and it's a huge if, it happens. Because remember, there is a government shutdown that's going on right now. For more news and information that you can use, head over to brownstoneworldwide.com, Cityscape Radio, and you guessed it, Brownstone Living Magazine. We'll see you around.